I almost feel like I'm cheating while making this video, because I'm here, and I'm gonna spend the next few minutes trying to show you, explain to you, why you need to watch this series called Violet Evergarden. But really, the show should do a lot of that for me. That's what worked on me. I was sold from the initial promotional trailer that was released far over a year ago, but maybe I'm just that easily impressed. I feel like as long as I have the show's gorgeous animation playing over my words with some of the show's beautiful sounding music behind me, I can sell this show without really trying. If anything, my voice might be the worst part of what you're watching right now, but I'm doing it anyway because of how important this show has become to me over the past year. How much I love it. Despite waiting for so long to actually get around to finishing it, because I just didn't want it to end. This is one of those types of shows that I watch, or I get to watch, maybe once a year, because it's a series that reminds me why I do what I do. A series that I can hopefully show you the best parts of, so that you might enjoy it as much as I have. So, ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and today, on Glass Reflection, we are taking a look at the 2018 anime series from Kyoto Animation, Violet Evergarden. Let's jam. Violet Evergarden is an anime series produced by Kyoto Animation, directed by Taichi Ishidate, and adapted from the light novel of the same name by author Kana Akatsuki. It follows the story of Violet, a young girl of the emotionally distant persuasion who is forced to adapt to a civilian lifestyle after spending the last several years as a military tool. And I want to emphasize the word tool, as her personality and decision-making process is far more logical and mechanical than empathetic and emotional. After losing both of her arms during the recent war, in an alternate version of Europe, her new handler Hodgins, a former soldier himself, hires Violet to work at his company, where she eventually decides to train to become an auto-memory doll. This is a writer of sorts, someone who listens to the desires of various customers and produces written letters for them to send to their loved ones. The time period of this anime is one where a decent chunk of the population does not possess the ability to write. While Violet is mechanically capable of writing letters, operating the typewriter with insane levels of speed, accuracy, and grammatical ability, the letters she produces are less emotional than people would like. Her personality is much like that of a doll, and one of her few desires is to be able to understand the emotions of those around her to get better at conveying those emotions on paper.
I read your letter. However, I do not have feelings for you now. Furthermore, your commitment to love is insufficient to me. However, I fully encourage you to try again once you have procured proper gifts as well as funds. Is there some kind of problem with this letter?
As she slowly becomes able to do that, she starts to piece together her own thoughts and feelings about a variety of things from her past. But that's something the show keeps on a slow burn. After the first initial episodes of introducing both Violet and the world to the audience, the plot takes a bit of a sidetrack to follow Violet around the country as she meets a variety of interesting characters and learns about their stories as she writes letters for them. She deals with love letters, letters to family who were left behind, letters for people who will never see the sender again. At first, I was disappointed at this change of pace, as these individual stories do nothing to progress the one plotline that I had become originally interested in, that being Violet's backstory. But as each of these one-off stories had their moment to shine, it became apparent to me that this is what makes Evergarden a fantastic series to watch. A lot of us watch anime that tell a story over a core of episodes, which then culminates in one large, gigantic emotional moment for the audience. It's something that's built up over time, which then comes crashing down on our heads and makes most of us bawl our eyes out for one reason or another. Violet Evergarden is a series that's able to condense all of that build-up and payoff into single episodes. These one-shot plots contain more heart in them than most other full shows that I'm used to watching. Like, remember that first 15 minutes in the Pixar film Up? How they fit an entire character's emotional life into that small segment? Evergarden manages to do that on a regular basis with most of its episodes. Sure, there are varying degrees of success, but it hits more than it misses. Even when the core of the episode's plot, that inevitable emotional twisting of the knife, is so obvious from the get-go, it still manages to land itself expertly by the end, just purely based on the way that the tales are told. And it's not all from Violet's perspective either. She's still the main character, sure, and she's heavily involved in all the stories, yes, but when necessary, she can and does become a secondary character to the plot of any given episode. It's very much similar to the episodic nature of shows like Mushishi in that way. Every episode furthers Violet's personal development by giving her new experiences, but sometimes that's not the main purpose, and the show knows when to stop focusing on that. Of course, Violet is just a really interesting character because it takes a while to learn exactly what her deal is. Her personality makes it very easy for one to just brush her off as yet another Rei Ayanami clone, one whose emotionless state is such a part of her character that it will never be changed. But the plot sets up her personal story in such a way that it becomes a journey for her. A journey to eventually come out of that emotionless shell. Near the end of the war, she was told by her previous handler Gilbert that he loves her, and she is desperate to understand what those words mean exactly. She starts off emotionless in the vast majority of her interactions, yes, but she quite obviously has the desire and drive to want to understand emotion, which is a far cry from your regular Rei clone. The emotionless presentation of her character, though, will change depending on what voice track you are using. In English, Erika Harlicher's portrayal of the character does admittedly have far more emotion put into Violet's voice than Yui Ishikawa's version in Japanese. This, on one hand, does help to distance the character from others of similar disposition that have been filling up the anime lexicon over the years, but on the other hand, some of that emotionless, doll-like presentation becomes part of the character itself, which makes it odd at times when it's not present. So picking which version to listen to is a bit more involved than usual. I do want to stress, though, that both the English dub and Erika's performance specifically is not wrong or bad. It's just different. So I felt the need to point that out. The music for Evergarden was composed by American-born Evan Call, and I've only spoken about his music once before on this channel, as he did the score for an anime called Big Order, though in full honesty, his music is literally the only good thing about that particular series, and you'd be better off listening to it online rather than within the show itself. But what I was worried about with Evan's music is that prior to this, I didn't feel like his music would fit the tone of what the series seemed to be trying to portray. This, of course, was something I thought before realizing that the music used in the show's promotional material, the very thing that set me on the path of falling in love with this series in the first place, was also composed by Evan. So really, I was worried for nothing. The music for this series holds just as much emotion as the animation and the story. It helps to both elevate the show and move you far more than the traditional soundtrack. It's this beautiful mix of classical music that's well suited to this series taking place in an alternate version of the early 20th century. And for me, like with all good anime soundtracks, not only does it fill you with emotion while you listen to it in the context of the show, but it also sounds just as good on its own. Lastly, I suppose I should talk about the animation for this series, though admittedly I find it hard to come up with words that would do better justice than the clips that I've been showing you over the course of this video. The level of detail used for this series far exceeds what we have become used to in a television anime. But it's something that Kyoto Ani has been building up to. There are many moments that the animation is reminiscent of specific scenes from some of their recent works. For example, I am reminded of those brief flashes of animation excellence in some Kyoto Ani shows like Hyoka or Sound Euphonium, where the quality of the production just spiked, if only for a moment. But those moments were still scattered throughout the show as a whole. The level of quality in the production here, I'd pretty much put on the same level as Kyoto Ani's theatrical works, A Silent Voice being the most recent. And this makes Evergarden one of the few times where a series breaks that barrier in production quality, normally reserved for said theatrical films. The backgrounds used in this series are breathtaking and look like something out of a Shinkai film. The characters are able to additionally help the story along due to the amount of extra detail in their movements. Their body language specifically allows for a much more refined way to portray these characters just with the animation alone. there are so many times in this series when a character is stopping themselves from saying something that either they want to say or are at least internally thinking. And the animation here is able to reflect that, which just adds that little extra bit of oomph to the gravity of any given scene. You can tell so much more this way without having to actually have the characters speak. This is the concept of show don't tell in its purest form. Now, by the end of the series, one of the disappointments I had is that the story does not fully complete. Thankfully, this first season both leaves off at a comfortable stopping point for the narrative, as well as actually announcing the production of a season 2 in the final moments of the show. The original material for this series is already completed, back before the show even aired, so I was hopeful that we would get a fully complete story in just these 13 episodes. But I can live with how things turned out, as long as season 2 turns out just as well as this initial season did. Sure, there's a chance that they'll screw it up and ruin everything, but I'm trying to be optimistic. There's still plenty of ground that can be covered by an additional core. For one, the episodic nature of at least the first half of this show can simply continue on unabated. The world of Evergarden is so vast, and there are plenty of stories that could still be told. Even as far as Violet is concerned, there are still some avenues available to the plot. Most of her story was dealing with the relationship she had with Gilbert, but even with that portion of the story somewhat resolved, there's still everything about her backstory before she even met Gilbert that's never been touched on. She's referred to as a doll and a tool countless times in the series, but she is still biologically a young girl. And if they so choose, the story of both her birth and childhood can be explored. This is just an example, of course, coming from someone who hasn't read the original novel, so perhaps the actual path that they will take will be something quite a bit different. The culmination of my thoughts on this series is simply thus: watch Violet Evergarden. I should clarify that this is not a suggestion. This is not me saying you should watch Violet Evergarden or that Violet Evergarden is worth watching, despite both being true. I am normally not this forceful with my thoughts. I usually like to be coy. I like to show you the good and the bad so that you can make your own decisions on if you think that this series might be to your tastes. Not today. Why? Because if I leave the option open, there is the chance, however small, that someone who would love this series would mistakenly choose not to watch it. This series is more than just a story with beautiful visuals and audio. It is a story about trying to understand the concept and significance of love at a time when it might possibly be already lost. It's about how things may never be like what they once were, but that life and love can still flourish even after seemingly all has been lost. So, I say again, watch Violet Evergarden. What do you think I would rate a series that I like so much that I'm going out of my way to absolutely make sure that you don't misunderstand me? Well, obviously, I would like to present Violet Evergarden with the rating of Certified Frosty, a rating I reserve for only the best of the best, or those shows too important to ignore. Now, normally, I give these out sparingly to shows that are less than a year old. I like to do it like once a year, and this year isn't over yet. Also, there are a lot of extremely good anime that have been released in the last few months and in 2018 as a whole, and quite possibly several of those shows will also deserve a Frosty rating, but I'll get to those shows when I get to them. For now, I would not forgive myself if I gave Evergarden anything less. I'll hold off until the end of the year to say if it's my best of year, but at the very least I will say it's definitely a contender. At the time of this video, Violet Evergarden is available only on Netflix, currently in both sub and dub. And at present, there doesn't seem to be any plans to have the series come out with a physical release that I can find, but Netflix licensed shows have had physical releases before, so it's just not out of the question. Just don't know exactly when. We also don't know if those physical releases will include the bonus 14th episode OVA of the series that came out on the Japanese Blu-rays. Luck, we'll get both, but I'm not going to hold out hope just yet. A very special thank you to all of my patrons who not only support my work in general, but allow me to do videos where I'm very passionate about it, and I want to talk about it a lot. and then I'm able to do so. So I thank you and appreciate you all. Specifically, though, as I like to do, I want to give particular shoutouts to patrons Joshua Garcia, Calhoun Boy, Siri Yamiko, Victor Ekmark, Ryfen Bonaparte, and Rune Jacobson for being especially awesome. You guys are great. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, watch more anime and stay frosty.